So while we contemplate a winter of disconnect, with warnings that the coming 3 winter months could see load shedding going up as high as stage 8, private companies are moving ahead with their own plans to make sure their lights stay on. Miner Sibanye Stillwater has just this week signed a deal to get power from a private wind farm, which is due to be built in the Northern Cape. And I'm joined now by James Wellstead of Sibanye Stillwater. Mr. Wellstead, thanks so much for joining us. Talk to me about how this deal works, because my understanding is you're not going to fund the build of this wind farm, but you're sort of saying, well, we're absolutely going to be customers.
Yeah, that's correct, Sally. So how it works is we have entered into an agreement with a consortium that's got experience in building and managing wind farms and other renewable energy projects, and they basically will develop and manage the wind farm, and we will guarantee an offtake for the electricity generated over a 15-year period. And we agree on a price progression over that period, and that allows them to obviously secure funding from the banks and other financiers. So it's a real win-win situation. We don't have to commit any capital, and they get a decent return on their investment.
And they're starting to build from June. When is it actually going to start feeding power to you?
It will be commercially operational in early 2025. So we'll be receiving energy effectively from throughout 2025.
All right, so you've got a bit, sort of an 18-month wait. I understand it's going to provide about 89 megawatts of power. Talk to me about Sibanye Stillwater's power needs, where those needs are, and what you're doing in the meantime when the power goes out.
So we're a substantial mining company in South Africa. We've got gold operations on the West Rand and in the Free States, and then we've got PGM operations, Platinum Group Minerals, in near the Rustenburg area, northwestern Limpopo. We consume over 700 megawatts of energy per year, so we probably in the top 5 customers of Eskom in terms of energy demand. So we're a high energy intensive user. And obviously, we are quite severely exposed to Eskom and the current issues that they're facing. So this is obviously a way to address some of those concerns and some of those issues over the longer term.
Now, what do we see a lot of companies sort of building a lot of solar panels on their roofs and that sort of thing? Do you have those sorts of systems up and running as well?
We don't, but we do have a number of other projects that we'll be developing over the next 2 years. This is the first one, but we've got 3 solar projects that we'll be developing at our PGM operations. That will be about 175 megawatts, which is a substantial amount of renewable energy. And then at our gold operations, which are shorter life in the West Rand, we'll be developing a 50 megawatt solar plant. And then there'll be other wind energy projects that we will be partnering with other parties, another over 300 megawatts of wind energy that will then wheel to our operations from remote locations.
So is the ultimate goal to be free of Eskom, or just to make sure that when Eskom cannot provide power, you can?
It's not specifically to be free of Eskom, but there are obvious benefits of generating our own electricity or entering into these partnerships. It is lower cost given the tariff increases that Eskom has been implementing over the last couple of years. So it will improve the sustainability of our operations. Energy is about 15 to 20% of our cost base, so it is an important part that we need to address. Obviously, we will then be able to also reduce our carbon footprint. Eskom generating most of its energy from coal-fired power stations means that we end up having quite high levels of CO2 footprints, basically carbon footprints.
Yeah. One of the issues we know is that Eskom is still in charge of the grid, and getting this power from the wind farm to the grid can be tricky. Is that something that's all been organised and that's in place, and that's something that this consortium's dealing with?
So that's an important part of this agreement. And, we've been looking at developing solar projects at our gold operations since 2014. And one of the big issues has been getting the wheeling agreement, which is, using the Eskom grid to transfer the energy from these remote locations and then take it off where we need it at our operations. And that's been a bit of a stumbling block, but we have seen significant progress recently, and that's enabled us to now, enter into this agreement.
You mentioned briefly the costs issue, but I want you just to dig into it a little bit more for me, because one of the pushes back we have against alternative power, a lot of people say, oh, it's a lot more expensive than coal-fired. So talk to me about the costs, the sort of the unit cost that you're going to be paying to get the wind power from this consortium. Is it more than Eskom charges, less than Eskom charges, or about the same?
It used to be more, but it's become cheaper over the long run, and it will be significantly less over the 15-year period than Eskom power currently, given that Eskom recently increased its tariffs by over 18% again. Those are significantly higher than inflation increases and are not competitive.
So, you mentioned quite a few of the projects, and it looks like ultimately it could come to almost half. I mean, you said your total power needs are 700 megawatts. The wind farm's going to be 89. You've got others that are 175. So roughly around 300, almost half potentially. That is a lot of power that Eskom is losing in terms of revenue. Have you had any pushback from Eskom on this? Because ultimately they are doing themselves out of their own revenue, or are they actually just relieved to hear such a big user of Eskom is going to be making their own plans, partially?
I think it is obviously a bit of a concern, because we are a big part of their revenue, as I said, being a big user of electricity from Eskom. But obviously we understand the implications of totally removing ourselves from as a customer of Eskom, and we will continue to work together with them to try and ensure that there is a sustainable future, because Eskom is critical, obviously, to the future of South Africa.
Yeah, mining, of course, is also a very crucial part of our industry. To your knowledge, are other big mining houses following a similar route to what Sibanye Stillwater is?
Yes, the mining industry is a big user of electricity, as we said. I believe there are over 7,500 megawatts of projects that are currently awaiting approval, etc., to be developed. Over 9,000 from industry or private industry in South Africa in total. So it's a substantial amount of renewable energy that is potentially going to be funded by the private sector over the next, 5 years or so.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for chatting to us this evening. James Wellstead of the mining company Sibanye Stillwater, and a private consortium, is starting to break ground on a big wind farm project in the Northern Cape from tomorrow. In 18 months, it should be up and running. It's going to provide 89 megawatts of power to Sibanye Stillwater, and Sibanye Stillwater has just had to guarantee they will be a customer, but no capital expenditure for them. Sounds like some interesting and innovative solutions to power coming on board.